From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Coming up on Cronkite News, the Maricopa County Recorder faces a barrage of questions about voting problems in Arizona's primary.
And NASA was successful in their final parachute landing test.
Plus, Hurricane Florence is now a Category 3, but the life-threatening possibilities still remain the same.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jennifer Alvarez.
And I'm Bryce Newberry. Thank you for joining us.
Polling places not set up, delays in opening, just some of the problems voters experienced in last month's primary election. Today, Maricopa County Recorder Adrian Fontes spoke about those issues, and Alexa Avila joins us with his next steps before the general election.
Fontes was very adamant that he cannot guarantee that there will not be issues when people go to the polls in November. He can, however, guarantee that the contractor who was hired to set up some election machines will be replaced with a Maricopa County employee. They have also started reaching out to facilities all over Maricopa County to make sure they can have more broad access to the property beforehand, to make sure that these issues do not occur again.
Number one, we're not going to use that contractor in November. So the problem with the contractor has been solved insofar as that's concerned. All right. Number two, we are going to be using as many resources as we can from other departments in the county as well.
Locations failed to open on time back on August 28th. The check-in equipment used to verify voters' identity had not been set up, and this left some voters unable to secure ballots for hours. A request was made to keep the polls open longer to accommodate voters, but the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors refused to make that request. Fontes says his office's legal team will take on any challenges brought by the candidates.
I don't get to decide who sues me or if they sue the county. I hope that folks will be able to take a sober look after we've got all of this information put together about whether or not this is something that is actionable against the county or other parties or actionable at all.
Fontes also says there will be voting centers open in November as well, where anyone, regardless of precinct, can vote. In the broadcast center, Alexa Avila, Cronkite News.
More than 1 million Arizonans voted in the primaries, yet our state still has what a recent study has coined a voter crisis. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein looked deeper into what this means ahead of the general election in November.
Because if we don't vote, then we're just absolutely losing it and to another party.
Eileen Dobson is one of many who voted in the Arizona primary. A recent study called Arizona's Voter Crisis, authored by Arizona State University's Morrison Institute for Public Policy, states that on average, our state ranked 43rd in national voter turnout. Our state also has just more than a 58% voter turnout on average, the report says. Senior research fellow with the Morrison Institute, David Doherty, says there is a high proportion of ethnic minorities in the state who are less likely to vote.
Really, we are electing officials and making decisions about propositions and initiatives based on a non-representative group of the adult population. That group who votes is significantly older, better educated, more affluent, and whiter. That is, from an ethnicity point of view.
Doherty says one way to stop the crisis is by teaching high school students about voting.
Where these people who are right on the verge of registering to vote are sold on the fact that their vote makes a difference.
Dobson says having a voice is important.
And I think it is important that we at least express our views and opinions.
In Phoenix, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
A divided federal appeals court today rejected Democratic challenges to 2 Arizona voting laws. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with a lower court that there is no evidence the state's ballot harvesting law, which limits who can turn in another person's ballot, is discriminatory. It also upheld the state rule that does not count ballots that someone casts outside their regular precinct. In a dissent, Judge Sidney Thomas disagreed, calling the path to state policies much like the changing stairways at Hogwarts. The suit was first filed by the Democratic National Committee before the 2018-2016 presidential elections.
The opioid epidemic, water resources, schools, native languages. The list of issues afflicting tribal communities is long, and tribal leaders were in Washington today asking for help with some of those problems. Imani Stevens is in our Washington bureau with details on the National Congress of American Indians Tribal Unity Impact Days.
Tribal leaders came from across the country to meet with and in some cases challenge their elected officials about problems facing Native Americans. And the Arizona officials I spoke with agreed that there are many challenges in Indian country. Representative Ruben Gallego was one of the many speakers who recited a list of issues.
What we want to see for our tribal countries are affordable health care, safe roads and bridges, well-funded schools, and a justice system that works for everyone, including the vulnerable and the marginalized.
But education was a major topic for Arizona lawmakers. Representative David Schweiker said the problems facing tribal schools are appalling and unacceptable.
We have to come up with a way to either find how do we get teachers who are willing to stay in the bottom of the Grand Canyon for more than a couple months, or we need to get the education side at BIA to be willing to enter this century of technology.
Gila River Indian Community Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis says it all comes back to funding or a lack of it.
There's been a scarcity of funds for education, whether at the state level or at the federal level as well.
Lewis says his tribe is working to make things better, but it's important that elected officials know that there are still challenges.
We're building a state-of-the-art school on the west end of our reservation right now, and so we have funding in an interior package right now that is going before the Senate. So
Schweiker says that when it comes to problems like a lack of qualified teachers in tribal schools, maybe it's time for new approaches.
But maybe the way we've been approaching it, it's time for a technology revolution.
Lewis said that it's important for members of Congress to hear firsthand about the problems that tribal citizens have to deal with day in and day out.
that's why it's so important that tribal leaders weigh in on these impact days when you have access to senators and congressmen. They're the ones that directly make those decisions.
Representatives who spoke to the group today said they've done their part, pointing to a list of 14 bills on Indian affairs that have passed the Senate and are awaiting action in the House. The Tribal Unity Days continue tomorrow. In Washington, Imani Stevens, Cronkite News.
Hurricane Florence has downgraded to a Category 3, but remains a huge threat to the East Coast. The Arizona, New Mexico, and El Paso region of the Red Cross has already sent more than 50 volunteers to help with relief efforts. European Space Agency astronaut Alexander Gerst tweeted these photos of the hurricane from the ISS. He called Florence a nightmare and said the hurricane is so large he had to use a super wide-angle lens from orbit to capture these photos. NASA officials and the National Hurricane Center warn that the storm can still bring disastrous impacts to the eastern seaboard.
I want to hammer that importance home. This is not going to be a glancing blow. This is not going to be a tropical storm. This is not going to be, one of those storms that hit and move out to sea. This is going to be, a Mike Tyson punch to the Carolina coast.
Landfall is expected late Thursday or early Friday. We'll take a closer look at the latest forecast on and track coming up in weather.
Recent reports of Google's alleged location data storing has prompted the Arizona Attorney General to investigate consumer tracking through smartphone operating systems. The probe, initiated by AG Mark Brnovich, says it is investigating potential Consumer Fraud Act violations for companies that store location data even when consumers turn off location services. We spoke with one security analyst about what the investigation could mean and what you should do to protect your privacy in the meantime.
For certain devices, you have to go both into the location settings as well as the app and user settings, I believe it is, as well as going on to the web interface for google.com. You can go into your own My Data and actually disable the settings there, as well as delete those data points if you so choose.
Depending on the outcome of the investigation, Arizona could bring a consumer protection case against Google. If the company is found to have violated the Consumer Fraud Act, the state also could seek restitution for consumers.
Meanwhile, Apple has revealed its newest tech gear in a highly anticipated release today. There are 3 different iPhones and a new version of the Apple Watch. Apple named each phone the iPhone XS, the XS Max, and the XR. Apple says each phone has new cameras, Retina displays, and more durable glass. But it all comes with a cost. The Max will sell for about $1,100.
Not everyone can make it into a classroom to finish their degree.
And coming up on Cronkite News,
the opportunity to finish a degree in the comfort of your own home is on the rise.
Plus, wider sidewalks, new shade trees, and cutting back traffic lanes. Details on the plans to make downtown Phoenix more walkable.
Join Emmy Award-winning CNN anchor Anderson Cooper as he receives the 2018 Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. Attracting industry leaders from the media, politics, business, and education, the award luncheon is the Cronkite School's signature fundraising event. Tickets for the luncheon ceremony on Wednesday, October 17th at the Sheraton Grand in Phoenix are available for sale at cronkite.asu.edu/luncheon or call 602-496-0482.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles.
In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
Choosing to pursue an online education over a traditional classroom education. I went to Tempe to talk to one student who depends on online classes for her degree.
Have fun with it. Not serious. Not too serious. There we go. Whew. Somebody's got to go do some leg days.
Add leg days to the busy schedule Emily Vance already has.
One step that way. I don't want to look like you have a cactus coming out of your head. Thank you.
Vance owns her own photography business and works full-time.
Mr. Fox, do you want to come help me take a picture? You want to come push the button? We're going to take a picture of Mom.
She's also a full-time college student, working toward a bachelor's degree in digital photography. And she goes to school every day from home.
I actually have been going to school for the past 8 years, and that is the only way I've been able to complete my degree or get close, because just the regular school didn't work for me. Going to class in that structured routine, I didn't like it. So one more year left, hopefully.
And she's not the only one pursuing an online education. Over 5.8 million students are taking online courses across the U.S. And at Arizona State University's online program, there's been a 60% increase of online enrollment since the 2016 school year.
When you're studying online, you're learning to interact and engage with people at a distance that will serve you in your lifelong career forever.
Vance believes the flexibility and accessibility of online classes serve her perfectly as well.
It's the only way I can finish my degree, because just with my crazy work schedule, I can't have a normal class schedule.
And for those thinking about starting an online degree, Vance says to just take it one step at a time.
So just take one class. You don't need to go full time. It's not a race, especially if you have a career or kids or just a busy life. It's okay to take 8 years to go to school.
And she can't wait to finally earn that degree.
So now that I can see that the end is in sight, now I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. Let's just max out however many credits I can take per semester and get it done, because I'm ready.
There are over 150 degree programs, both graduate and undergraduate, offered at ASU Online.
And with an influx of on-campus students in downtown Phoenix, the city is following a national trend in making the area more friendly to pedestrians. As Charisma Sandoval reports, one Valley community says improvements to sidewalks and storefronts are building community and the local economy.
Drivers rule the road, except for a few blocks along 1st Street in downtown Phoenix. The city widened sidewalks, planted 125 shade trees, and the street narrowed to one lane between McKinley and Moreland Street. Neighborhood leader Vermone Pierre said residents now have the space to talk to each other without the interference of heavy traffic.
We have sidewalks and benches and other places that we can participate in and invest in, and I just encourage us to continue to tell that story, to continue to build the downtown community that we love so much.
City officials hope business storefronts catch the eye of customers walking by. A study by George Washington University found places with high levels of walkability see an increase in revenue and spending. Cameo Wilson says that's the reason she just opened a walk-up window on 1st Street, where she sells smoothies and fruit bowls.
It's really convenient for people to just be walking down the street on this nice new sidewalk with tons of new parking.
Improvements have attracted more businesses and a steady flow of customers, says Jim McPherson, a member of the local neighborhood association.
You now have spaces that are now filling in. There's an increased interest, like this building here, of coming in the community.
Pierre believes this project helps the Roosevelt community.
This is a community that's creative, that's inclusive, and that's connected.
Phoenix is joining cities like Detroit and Los Angeles in the top tier of metros, claiming the changes are enhancing pedestrian life and boosting economies. In Phoenix, Charisma Sandoval, Cronkite News.
Deputy City Manager Mario Peniagua said they are considering 3 other projects like the 1st Street improvements in Central and North Phoenix. Arizona is no stranger to NASA testing.
And this morning, some special spacecraft parachutes were deployed in Yuma. Coming up on Cronkite News, details on the desert touchdown and hopes of sending another mission to the moon.
The first day of fall is only 10 days away, but it may be a little bit longer before we start feeling the effects of fall here in the valley. I'll tell you just how hot we're going to get this week coming up.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. The 2018 election season has arrived. Join us for primary and general election debates. Right here, meet the candidates and hear their positions. Arizona Horizon, your source for what matters most this election season. Only on Arizona PBS.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people. To see those kids drink clean water for the first time, it's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
If you're looking for one show that tells you what happened that day in the world of business, it's NBR.
We saw a classic shipwreck.
Nordstrom's opening stores.
Triple-digit gains.
Crude climbs.
We're there to help our audience find new investment ideas.
The market still has room to go up.
Nightly Business Report is the longest-running business television program in history.
Weeknights at 10:30 on Arizona PBS.
A new journey to the moon and back is set for takeoff after NASA successfully completed a final parachute test in Yuma today. A test version of NASA's Orion spacecraft safely touched down under 3 parachutes. Orion safely deployed all 3 parachutes in sequence after it was released from an aircraft about 6 miles high. The parachutes are designed to protect the spaceship from coming back to Earth at too high of speeds. Orion program manager Mark Kirasich says the success of this test will allow for extensive space travel.
Orion is our new human exploration spacecraft, and this is the spacecraft that is going to take people farther into space than we've ever gone before. And our missions will last for several weeks long, and during that time, the crew will travel hundreds of thousands of miles into space and back in some of the harshest environments that people have ever been exposed to.
Kiricic said this parachute test was the final one after nearly a decade of development.
The Grand Canyon's North Rim could stay open longer this year, and tourism officials say climate change is the reason. Less snowfall could mean more visitors and more revenue for the Grand Canyon. Overnight services typically shut down in mid-October, while the highway leading there closes December 1st each year. Grand Canyon officials plan to revamp marketing for day use at the North Rim. Significant changes are still years away. It's been mostly dry across our state, but the East Coast is preparing for devastating amounts of rain.
All eyes are on Hurricane Florence. Haley, what can we expect for the rest of the week?
The entire country is focused on Hurricane Florence as it heads towards the eastern seaboard. The storm sits about 400 miles away from the city of Georgetown, and the Carolina coast will begin to feel the effects of that storm as early as tomorrow. The trajectory of the storm has shifted slightly south, and the storm is moving about 15 miles an hour right now, bringing with it heavy winds and potentially devastating amounts of rainfall. But lucky for us, not a whole lot of rain in our forecast today. We're sitting at a high 105 right now, not a lot of moisture in the air with that dew point at a low 33 degrees. A little bit cooler up in the high country for our state today, 76 in Flagstaff, 81 in the Grand Canyon. Phoenix is one of the hot points of the state today at 105, 106 in Gila Bend, and 106 in Yuma. This is the 113th day that we've reached over 100 degrees in 2018 so far, and we're only going to add to that total heading to the rest of the week. We're going to reach our high for the week of 108 by Friday and Saturday, and we're going to cool down just a bit by this time next week. In the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Haley Brand.
Pop Warner football has been around for nearly a century.
But participation is dropping.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how the decrease in kids hitting the gridiron is affecting the Pop Warner program.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
Fewer kids are playing Pop Warner football these days, and that could do with the safety concerns or the prices. But either way, the decline in participation of youth football is not expected to drop. Cronkite sports reporter Anthony Totri found out how one Pop Warner league is dealing with it.
Far West Pop Warner in the West Valley said they typically field 15 to 20 teams. This season, they only have enough players for 11 squads.
We try to be as safe as we can. I mean, we've been around 90 years for a reason. We're always in the forefront of trying to do things right, especially in this time of day and age. Our sport is under fire.
According to the Sports and Industry Fitness Association, there's been a nearly 5% drop year over year nationwide in the number of kids ages 6 to 17 playing tackle football. Less participants means less money coming in, which makes it difficult to pay for all the necessary aspects of youth football.
Fields cost a ton of money. They're very expensive, and if you have them at night, you're paying for not just the fee of the field, but now you're paying for the lights of the field as well.
For years, Far West Pop Warner has rented out 2 full fields here outside State Farm Stadium for both practices and games. However, this is the first season that they will only use these fields for practices, and that's because the rental price is equivalent to registration for roughly 30 to 40 kids.
Those youth fields were costing us upwards of $10,000 every year.
Aside from fields, the $300 average registration fee per person also goes toward insurance, referees, lights, and a handful of other essentials. Far West Steelers coach and parent Vince Del Ponte believes that Pop Warner's rule book takes the necessary steps toward keeping kids safe.
Safety is not an issue, and that goes back to the rules with Pop Warner. Because of these rules, we're not going to do some of the stuff that's going to get the other kids injured.
Despite youth football leagues making an effort to implement safer rules, the SFIA projects that participation in youth football will continue to decline over the next 5 years. In Phoenix, Anthony Totri, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, a new study takes a look at the rise and the impact of ride-hailing services like Lyft and Uber. And we'll hear about an upcoming summit on aging well. That's the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm William Brangham. On the next NewsHour, Miles O'Brien flies with researchers into the eye of Hurricane Florence. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.